Welcome to Tales, Tunes, and Tomfoolery starring Jerry Springer, along with Gene Galvin and me. I'm Megan Hills. We're recorded live in front of a brilliant studio audience at the Folk School Coffee Parlor in Ludlow, Kentucky.
My daddy came home.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Mr. Jerry Springer.
Thank you. Whoa! Whoa! Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, now, please, take your seats. Everybody, take your seats, please. Oh, man. Woo. Okay, can we bring in some extra chairs in the back there? Okay.
We have a huge crowd here tonight.
Yeah, I think.
We have a huge crowd, but we don't, again, it seems like it's been, 8 months since Megan Hills has been here in studio, in coffee shop, as we say.
Well, she was that woman that used to sit at the table with us?
Yes.
Oh, stop.
Oh, I remember her.
I think when she started with us, she was in her early 30s. I think she's like 48, 49 now or something. I haven't seen her.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, Megan, let's address the...
Hi, Gene.
Yeah, how are you?
Good.
Let's address, it's a metaphor, the elephant in the room.
Is that any way to introduce her?
No, she's not in the room. That would be, let's address the elephant. That would be,
Let's
Jerry.
address the elephant in the room. Megan, nice to have you with us.
No, Jerry, that
Thanks,
would be...
Jerry, I appreciate that.
Jerry, that would be, let's address the elephant that's not in the room.
Not
and
in
that's
the
not
room.
what I said.
Yeah, okay.
So, A, it's a metaphor, and
Yes.
B, it's not a
Yes.
parallel anyway
Yes.
way to what you're saying. Megan, yes, we know that you have a job. You have a serious job, and you are an human resources trainer. By the way, Jerry, do you know where she is? Tell Jerry, Megan, right now where you are this minute.
I am in Sarasota, Florida.
What?
Which is where Jerry lives.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
I am
Hey, back
literally
away.
across
Yeah, step
back
back,
off,
Megan.
baby.
Yeah. I'll give you the address. I'm going to give you the code to the gate.
Are you going to go by the pink house?
Yeah. He lives in a
I am
gated...
across the street from your airport, Jerry. Bradenton Airport. I'm across the street.
You were there this morning, weren't you?
Yeah,
When you
I flew out this morning.
Well, Megan was there.
Oh, my.
In the air,
So thanks for saying hi, Jerry.
because she slept there last night because her
Yeah.
company didn't have enough money for a room, so she slept at the airport. But
Well, Mickey had me sleep at the airport
I
last
hear you.
night, too, but
For other reasons.
We must have been in
Yeah.
different terminals.
different reasons.
different reasons.
Yes, we know you have a house payment and a car payment and all that stuff, but can't you straighten out your priorities and quit this any day job and come work on this podcast? $17 an hour is pretty good dough.
It's pretty solid, especially for an hour and a half a week.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really very lucrative.
Yeah.
And then you just have to be here one evening a week. The other evenings you can do that other whatever that job
do that other
is.
stuff. Yeah.
Whatever it is that you need to do to pay your bills.
Right. Well, we're looking at two options. One is having a friend of ours, I'm not going to give his last name, his first name is Lewis, just pay you for the year, even though I know you're not much work if you only work on the podcast an hour a week, and then we got the problem solved.
Gene, I'm down with that.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you, sister, as they say. But I'll tell you, Megan, the other option is we just change the entire schedule of the podcast around your schedule.
I'm also okay with that.
Okay. We'll get back to you.
Yeah, we could do that. Or, if you're low on money, why don't you just sell your plane? I'm
that's
sorry.
Right. I don't have one, you big
Well,
jerk.
Megan, that's a segue. That brings a segue, and you can drop off at any point. Do you want to hang up now, or do you want to stay with us? You can do whatever you want. Though when we hear the click, we'll note it. Oh, Megan just bailed on us.
Yeah.
Jerry,
Yes.
and this is good because our mutual friend Lewis, no last name.
No last name.
No references to any companies. Our friend Lewis is in the house.
Yeah.
He knows airplanes.
He knows
He
it.
flies airplanes. Been flying since he was a
God
young
bless
boy.
him. He was the one that talked me into getting a plane.
All right. So I was thinking, man, why don't we use the tools that we have to help you sell your plane? because you're slowing down a little bit in terms of your professional stuff, and you're like, well, I don't need this plane. Here it was, right there.
Yeah.
That was it. She just left.
Yeah.
She's like, boring.
Yeah.
Beep, 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 beep.
At least she didn't leave during my joke, but go ahead.
So you had a plane. You have a plane.
I have a plane, and
it's a freaking Gulfstream.
Yeah.
You told me before the show started it's going to fetch something like $1,800 to $2,000, something like that.
No.
Is that correct?
No, higher. No, the 1.8 I said, not 1,000.
Well, what is it? 1.8 what?
It goes in the air, $1,000,000.
What?
Well, the things that go in the air.
$1.8 million?
For a plane. Some planes are, big planes are huge, way more.
I understand.
So I'm putting it up for, and by the way, if you're listening to this podcast and you'd like to buy a plane.
Yeah, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to try to hustle it for you.
Yeah, let's see if we can get 1.8, 2 million for the plane.
All right, so we're going to put it on.
And you can put a little sign on, Jerry owned this.
Okay, so we're going to put that on our website, jerryspringer.com.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to put an ad on the website. Hey, I'm your friend. I've been your friend for many years.
And this is, by the way, the demographic for our audience.
That's what I'm thinking. That's the point.
Who listens to this podcast that isn't looking to buy a plane?
I'm going to have a personal conversation with
This is
Harold
the
Tucker after the
stupidest
show
idea you've
about
ever
maybe
had.
buying a plane. I might even talk. We have a new employee, Bree Long, who is doing our social media. Let's hear it from Bree Long.
Oh, and she's definitely in the market.
Well, she's a
college student.
She's a student
gonna buy
at
her
the
plane.
University of Cincinnati. They call it DAP, Design, Art, Architecture, and Planning. Do I have that right, Bree?
Yeah.
So she's...
I actually, I speak at some of their classes there.
Yeah,
actually,
by the way, it's an elite program, elite
well, not
university
when I speak
program
there,
in the
but
country.
otherwise, it's a good school.
So anyway,
Yeah.
we're going to put it on our website.
Yes.
We're going to have a picture.
Oh, it's going to be unbelievable.
And the only picture I have, now this is going to blow the bit. I've claimed all these years I've never been on the plane. And I've had people say, what kind of a prick is he? I mean, you're an old friend. Can't you get a ride on the plane?
And how do you answer that?
I say, but the fact is, I have a picture of you and me and Lewis.
Standing in front of the
No last
plane.
name on Lewis. No reference of any company. But Lewis and his lovely wife, Patti. So I'm going to have, and you and Mickey, so I'm going to put a picture up there of that plane, and I'm going to sort of gray out the faces, so that's going to be on the ad. We're going to put this on the website. I'm putting it on Craigslist, but I'm putting it on Craigslist Cincinnati, Columbus, Dayton, and Indianapolis, and I'm putting it on Cincinnati Marketplace, where you can sell bicycles and generators and stuff, and then we'll put Jerry Springer's airplane there.
That's the audience we're looking for.
Trust me, dude, we're going to hustle this.
This will be good.
plane.
Yeah, because, I could use the money.
Yeah, I know you could. Whispering Beard Folk Festival is coming up.
Yes, that's a great festival. In fact, our very first year of doing the show, we had just been doing it a couple of months. We went to that.
We did.
Had a great time.
We did.
I got up there and gave a real plug for our podcast.
Well, your task was to go up and introduce the Tillers. The Tillers are the huge group regionally around here, or even nationally, and introduce them. And your only mission for us was go up and promote the podcast. Did a great job introducing the Tillers. Came off, hey, how'd I do? Well, you did great, but there was no mention of the podcast.
I totally forgot, didn't I?
Yeah, you totally screwed it up. So the Whispering Bird Folk Festival is coming up August, is it 23rd, Catfish? Do I have that right? Right? The weekend,
that's Charlevoix.
Well, see, and we can't go because we're going to Charlevoix.
And you're going to be playing there in front of that store.
And I will be busking on the streets in Charlevoix. But no, we have to go do this sort of a Great Gatsby kind of thing, to go to Charlevoix and
look forward every
be
year.
out on the beach with big white tents and stuff. I wanted to ask you something. There seems to be almost... Oh, and by the way, before I draw you into this, pardon me.
Yes.
Sorry for the quick disruption. But we have Tim Lancaster coming up. And let me tell you who he is. You'll want to stick around for this because Tim Lancaster is from Huntington, West Virginia, and he just returned from being an artist in residence at Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Wow. And Harpers Ferry is an incredibly important historical place because John Brown virtually had a standoff with the military back in the time of Abraham Lincoln, by the way. He's an abolitionist. And the Appalachian Trail comes through there, and there's just a lot of history there. So he's going to perform a song that he wrote as an artist in residence in Harpers Ferry. But I wanted to ask you, there seems to be almost a controversy a week with President Donald Trump. And it's like the beat goes on. And there have been so many of late that it's hard to enumerate them. But is there one that stands out in your mind as we do this recording on, 31st of July, 2018?
Yeah. Well, there's almost a controversy every single day. But I was just thinking, when you said President Donald Trump, years ago when I was still doing the news, I had an opportunity actually to interview him. And, so one of the early questions I just threw in there just to get a warm-up, I said, it's Donald J. Trump. What's the J stand for? And he said, genius.
It's not bad. That's new material.
Yeah. Hey, stick around for the next show. Yeah.
The joke kind of sucks, but at least that's new material.
Hey, what is that? J's for genius.
Every day. And there are two questions. And if you watch all these shows, all the cable news shows and just everything now, there's always the question, which issue or which scandal or which controversy that he's involved in is the most important one, which is the one that could take him down. And I think the one that could take him down is not necessarily the one that is most important for the country. So, for example, you can argue, if you're making an argument against Trump, you can say, he's a bigot, he's incompetent, he's dumb, he's a bully, but for all of these problems, and, even when he thinks he's above the law, when he breaks the law, the banking laws or whatever, I'm not saying those aren't big issues, and that's, important. You can't have a president who's a crook, for example. But for all of those issues, the truth is, even though it makes us angry, the country could survive it. I mean, even if he has banking crimes, for example, the country could survive that. If there's something that he needs to be indicted for things that he's done, even if the courts rule or Mueller decides you don't indict a sitting president, they'll wait till he's no longer the president, whether it's in 2020 or 4 years later or whenever it happens, and they'll indict him then. So, but those issues don't threaten the country other than we go through a bad period and maybe make some bad decisions. But we have institutions that can deal with all of that. The thing which we get tired of hearing all the time, but is the most serious to our nation, is all this business with the Russians. The fact that he is owned by the Russians, that he is owned by Putin. Now, I know that sounds kind of extreme to say, but it defies belief anymore to believe that they don't have something on him. You can't come up with another explanation for why he's behaving towards Russia and towards Putin as he is. There's just nothing else that makes any sense, particularly since if the Russians don't have anything on him and he's such an egomaniac and he wants to look good, why wouldn't he say, let's get to the bottom of this right away? Why would they keep lying about meetings? Why would they keep making these excuses all the time? Why would he not want to say anything bad about Russia? It wouldn't hurt him personally. So there's something there. And at some level, even those who love Trump must know at some level, particularly when they saw, him meeting with Putin 2 weeks ago at that summit that wasn't one, and they had that 2-hour meeting with no media there, no other person in the room, never mind there wasn't the media there to cover it, but no government official there, just the interpreter. And so they got something on him. That is God's truth. There's no other explanation. And we never heard anyone give an answer to that question. With all the other talking heads you have, you've never heard anybody say, why is he always making excuses for Russia? Well, the reality is that for the past 100 years, because we've just been through the centennial of the Communist Revolution in 1917, for the past 100 years, this has been a method of first the Soviet Union and since then Russia. It's how they operate. It's how they don't want to go to, if at all possible, to a shooting war. They realize in this nuclear age what the consequence of that is. So their way to meet their goals, which remember is the whole history of Russia for centuries has been they need to expand. They don't want to be surrounded. They need those warm water ports. They've got to destabilize any entity that stops them from expanding. That's the goal of Russia. And since they can't start a military war against the rest of the world, what they do, probably more effectively than any nation in the world, is they infiltrate. And the United States has been a victim of that since Stalin, after World War II. The whole issue with the McCarthy era. How do you think Nixon came into prominence? Because he investigated, when he was on the House Un-American Activities Committee, this fella Alger Hiss, who was a hero of the left, who was instrumental in bringing about the United Nations. And Nixon claimed that Alger Hiss who was with the State Department, a high official in the State Department, that Alger Hiss was really a communist working for the Soviet Union. He was a spy. And nobody believed that. And in truth, Nixon turned out to be correct. And that's how he became, as a congressman, so famous, and then was picked by Eisenhower to be the vice president. So Russia was doing it then. And as I said, with the McCarthy era, the Soviet Union and then Russia has always been trying to infiltrate the United States. And how they do it, and then we can relate it to Trump. How they do it, as we've mentioned a couple of times before, is they are always on the lookout for certain kinds of people in America, not knowing ahead of time which one of them will move into an area of prominence. So they look for people that could be influential in either the economic area of the United States or the cultural. They could become cultural figures in America, political figures, people that rise to influence. Once they spot these people and they see some of them out of the hundreds or thousands they go after, if they see some rising to the top, then they move in to try to turn them. Now, how do they turn them? There's a very specific way they do it. Remember the acronym MICE. M for money, I for ideology, C for compromise or coercion. They have the person compromised, and E for ego. They look for people that fall into those four categories. The single most common reason for somebody to become a spy, for somebody within a nation to turn against that nation, is not ideology, it's money. Someone is in financial need. Somebody is suddenly in a crisis. They know that, start out being very friendly to that person. We can help you out with a little money. They don't mention any spy work. They don't mention what they want them to do. They just see someone who is vulnerable because of a financial condition, and then they befriend this person, maybe help them get a job, maybe, in Trump's case, buy some property, and then all of a sudden they kind of reel them in. Then they try to make the person not feel guilty about it. So then we get to the I, the ideology. I'm going to show you how these things worked with Trump. They first noticed Trump when he started making trips to the communist world in 1977. He went to what was then Czechoslovakia, which was within the Soviet sphere, of course, communist country. And their secret police or whatever, and he went there because his first wife, Ivana, was from Czechoslovakia, and they went there to visit her mother or father. But anyway, went there to visit, and he would start making trips there. So they just started to have a file on him, as they do with wealthy people that go there. Now we're into the 1980s. He starts making a whole bunch of trips to the Soviet Union, and the communist countries all shared their files. They said, well, this guy's wealthy. Let's start keeping a file on him. And so they did when he visited Russia in 1988. One of the people they got to befriend Trump just to see, what's going on. They don't know yet that this is the guy they want to stay with, but they want for the file to have something on him. And he mentions then in 1988, he says, I'm thinking one day it'd be great to be president. Just like a passing comment like that. And into the file it goes. It's a red flag. Now let's start watching him. In 2013, he has the Miss Universe pageant in Russia. And what Trump wants, he would love to have Trump Tower in Moscow. That is one of his, he really wants that to happen. And he wants to use the Miss Universe pageant as a means of getting to actually meet meet Putin in person and meet the oligarchs there. What they do in 2013 is they arrange for the 12 richest Russians, the oligarchs, the friends of Putin that run the oil industry and whatever the 12 wealthiest people in Russia, they have a 2-hour meeting with Trump. And it's just a friendly meeting. And in that meeting, they try to sell him just on the notion, we want you to understand Russia. They're not talking politics. They're not saying if you ever run. They're just saying, we want you to understand, there's a club around the world of kind of like, we don't want to be restrained by democratic institutions. We don't want to be restrained by alliances. We like doing our business where we don't have those restraints on us. And so they start selling this idea to him. And of course, they know this is right up his alley. He doesn't want all the restraints, the governments put on him. And so we want to develop relationships. And we, like you, the United States, we are scared of the terrorists because we have faced in the southern border of what used to be the Soviet Union and is now Russia, they have had the attacks by terrorists and the Muslims as well. And they want to blame the Muslims. And so they said, look, we're in the same boat. So if we could wouldn't it be great if the world could basically have those of us who are wealthy and successful? This is the pitch they're giving Trump. And so not even talking politics, Trump is thinking, wow, I can relate to these guys, which all of a sudden is the second thing you got to do. There'll be guilt if it's a flat out, here's money, now do what we say. And, well, I kind of agree with these people. This is an easy thing to do. Then, and I'll round it out quicker. In with all these people, you are constantly, once they target you, you are constantly under surveillance. Cameras in the rooms, you talk to people who are wired, hidden mics, everything. So even Trump at one point said, you think I'd be crazy enough to do anything, knowing that if you go to Russia, if you go to the Soviet Union and you're on their list, by gosh, everything you've ever said or done, there's a picture of it, there's a soundtrack of it. That's how they just very subtly let you know, well, they don't threaten, they just let the guy know, they let Trump know, we have this. And then finally, you appeal to the person's ego. That's the E of mice. And you appeal to the person's ego, which of course is outrageous with Trump. And you could be one of all us rich guys, around the world, we'll be taught. Why do you think he likes all these authoritarian figures? In other words, Trump didn't start all this. He is just, in the whole history of what was the Soviet Union and now Russia, he is the biggest fish they ever nabbed. They've never, with all the people they turn in our country, and they turn people, they've got a spy network. A lot of countries do. We have, I'm sure. But for all the people they turn, they've never had a president of the United States as one of their guys. So you don't even have to reach the conclusion that Trump was sitting at home and saying, how can I destroy America? They just suck you in. And the greatest fear is not the banking stuff. That may be one of the ways they can prove it. And it's not the women. And it's not all this other stuff, which may be him thinking he's above the law, and it may be criminal activity, and he has to pay a price for it. I get it. But the threat to America is that we have a president, seemingly unthinkable, but we actually have a president of the United States who is under the control at some level of the head of Russia, Vladimir Putin.
That's one dark analysis. I like that. Let's bring Tim Lancaster up from Huntington, West Virginia. And as Tim settles into a chair at the microphone, welcome, Tim.
Good to be here.
Glad to
Thanks for
have
having
you.
me.
And are you now, or have you ever been a communist? No.
Not once, Jerry.
Not one. Yeah, not once, but
There was a time I experimented a little bit.
Yeah, just experiment.
Tim, what took you to Harpers Ferry, West Virginia? I referenced that earlier, that you were an artist in residence there. How did you even find out about that, by the way?
Well, my friend Ian Thornton told me about the position being available, and I applied for it like you would any other job.
Okay. And you were there for how long?
9 weeks. And let me clarify, this was in 2016, so
Gotcha.
it's 2 years ago.
Okay, that's fine. And we're going to ask you about your album in a second, but you
Sure.
have a song that you wrote based on the experience at Harpers Ferry. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah,
That you're going to
few of
do.
them.
Just to give a quick reference to Harpers Ferry, John Brown from Kansas ended up, after gathering he was an abolitionist during the Civil War era, during the era of slavery, and he gathered up some fellow abolitionists. And it's hard, Jerry and Tim, as you look back on that period, there bound to have been a lot of people, and maybe we would have been among them, who would say, I don't care what year it is or what context, cultural or historic context we're in, slavery is just repugnant, just guaranteed 100%. There's no way to look at it any other way than to say this must stop. John Brown held that position and said that it is a war against African American people, and so we have to treat it as a war. And he said bloodshed is, they're shedding blood. Their blood is being shed, and that is how he morally grappled with it.
Correct.
And even Abraham Lincoln, who probably looked at it and said, oh my God, if we go there, oh, it's going to be real crazy if we go there. And Lincoln argued that we can't go there. And I imagine in his quiet moments said, we'll fix it another way, and ultimately he did. But so John Brown ended up in Harpers Ferry and an armament shed, so to speak. Is that correct, Tim?
Yeah, it's the firehouse.
Yeah, and in there was armament for
Correct, yeah.
the
Harpers
militia.
Ferry was the largest armory in the country, which is why he wanted to raid it, ultimately.
And he got in there, and then the uprising that John Brown hoped would happen of people joining him actually didn't.
Right, some
People got kinda
unsuspected things occurred.
Yep. Yeah. And there was a shootout, and eventually he was hanged. Where he was hanged?
He's hanged in Charlestown.
In Charlestown, West Virginia.
Right, and it wasn't really West Virginia at the time yet. This was still before West Virginia.
Yeah.
So your time there, you looked into all of this stuff and wrote some songs. And I know the
here
song
and
you're
there.
going to do tonight is not necessarily about John Brown. There's so much going on in
Right, yeah,
in
I wanted
area.
to cover a lot of different things. I wanted to try, because it would have been easy to just talk about the Civil War the entire
Right.
time, so I wanted to expose other parts of
So
Harpers
tell
Ferry.
us, and then please perform it, but
Sure.
what is the song you're going to do, and give us a quick background on that.
Yeah, the song's called Can't You Hear the Sound? It's about a town called Virginia's Island, which was about 200 people, if I can remember right.
Okay.
A small industrious town. And it had these two tunnels that navigated the water from the Shenandoah River beneath it to power these two giant turbines, which powered a lot of the industry in that town.
Okay.
But since the town was so close to the river, it got flooded 3 times before people eventually left it. But those the remains of that town and the foundations are still there.
All right. If you would do that song, we'd love to hear it.
All right.
Tim Lancaster.
And if you're just listening, this instrument is called the bones. The Shenandoah's a mighty strong river. She was named by the natives as a daughter of the stars. When a man thought he could harness her power just to keep his engine running, he didn't think about the cost. You can dig down all your tunnels, build up all your walls, but there's always here a lesson to be learned. When mother comes calling, you can bet there is no stalling when she asks for you to sit and wait your turn. And can't you hear the sound of the river? Mom, it's flooding through the floor, and the crash outside of the cotton mill's louder than the howls that are begging at the door. And you know it's gonna rock you through the ages when you try to reach a higher ground. To think the very same thing that gave you power is the thing that's gonna tear you down. And the river keeps on rushing through the Blue Ridge without a hesitation or a doubt. Are you sure that you knew what you meant when you thought that you could figure it out? All that is born returns to the earth, and that's a circle that we never can refuse. Just grab yourself a pole and carry on with your fishing, but just listen when it's time to pay your dues. And can't you hear the sound of the river? Mom, it's a flooding through the floor, and the crash outside of the cotton mill's louder than the howls that are begging at the door. And you know it's gonna rock you through the ages when you try to reach the higher ground. To think the very same thing that gave you power is the thing that's gonna tear you down. And can't you hear the sound of the river? Mom, it's flooding through the floor, and the crash outside of the cotton mill's louder than the howls that are begging at the door. And you know it's gonna rock you through the ages when you try to reach the higher ground. To think the very same thing that gave you power is the thing that's gonna tear you down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, man. Whoa. Oh. Well, I didn't see that coming.
No, that is very good.
That.
Boy, I tell you, Tim, these artists and residencies that occur. We had a woman, Michaela Miller, who did one at Gettysburg.
Yeah.
And she's been on our podcast
Okay.
and did some songs.
Good to know.
Now you from Harpers Ferry.
Yeah, and they're doing all
it's
over
amazing.
national parks. A
It's
lot of national
wonderful.
Parks
And we're so glad that we got you, and thanks to Casey Campbell, who I know, who is our music coordinator and a singer-songwriter himself. So, God, we would be happy to have artists and residents at these national parks come through here on a flow, because the art is just so good. Don't you agree, Jerry? This is really cool stuff.
I mean, yeah. You know, you keep thinking, well, we're going to have a guy playing the guitar and, you know, we'll all sing along. But this is at such a different level. For those who are listening, and you said what you were playing there are bones.
Yeah, my left hand was moose bones that I found when I worked in a trail crew up in
Moose bones?
Moose bones, yeah.
Yeah.
I found those on Deer Mountain in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And you were on a trail crew up there?
I was, yep.
And by the way, the Harpers
Why would
Ferry...
moose bones be on Deer Mountain?
It should be Moose Mountain, right?
Moose
Don't
live out
they
in the
know?
woods.
Get some deer bones, for
Yeah.
God's sakes.
Hey, by the way, Harpers Ferry is what's called the mental middle, as you referred to in our conversation before the show, of the Appalachian Trail.
Correct, yeah.
Appalachian Trail Conservancy is there, which is the headquarters of the Appalachian Trail.
Right.
And that comes right through Harpers Ferry.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite part about living there, was talking to the through hikers.
Yeah. Because there are thousands who come through, only a few hundred finish. We had a guy on our show a few weeks back who ran the trail. He just finished. He finished in the top 10. A guy from Cincinnati, Harvey Lewis is
incredible.
his name.
What was his
And
name?
he did it in Harvey Lewis.
Harvey Lewis.
And he did it in, I don't know, 50 days, 49 days or so. It's because it's usually done in about 6 months, 4 to 6 months. And we had him on the show with a cell phone, literally running, and it was 7:38 at night, because he ran until about 10:30 at night. And then he would sleep, get up in the morning, and hit the trail again. So he was, it's a good story.
Crazy. Is what
Crazy,
it was.
yeah. Tim, we're gonna see if we can get you to come back again for another show, and we'll hear another
You are
song.
real talent.
Would you
Thank
take
you,
us
Jerry.
out on Down by the Riverside? Tim Lancaster is his name. Tell us where people can hear your music and mention your latest album.
Yeah, so my album is called Stones, Rivers, and Trains. It's available on Spotify. You can listen to it there if you're a member, and any other platform.
Yep.
And then you can find me easiest probably at facebook.com/Tim Lancaster songs.
Okay. TIM and then just
TIM.
LANCASTER.
Yep,
Just
like the
as it
town.
sounds. Yep. Okay. Tim Lancaster doing Down by the Riverside. Jerry Springer on the second verse.
Yeah,
it's
I'll be-
always an adventure. When
I'll be
Jerry
playing
jumps in.
my old bones.
Jerry's gonna play the bone.
Is the key of G fine, Jerry?
Yeah, he doesn't know
yeah.
the difference. He doesn't know the difference.
L sharp.
B flat. I'm gonna lay down my heavy load down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my heavy load down by the riverside and study the war no more. I ain't gonna study the war no more. 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 Ain't gonna study the war no more.
Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside.
You've been listening to Tales, Tunes, and Tomfoolery, recorded live at the Folk School Coffee Parlor in Ludlow, Kentucky. Thanks to Patrick Kennedy for writing our opening song, and to you for listening. Check out our website at jerryspringer.com.
Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Y'all come back now, you